If you are a technology startup and you're looking to go to market or grow your revenue with the Department of Defense, with the military, this video is for you. So, what I'm going to break down in this is specifically the different stages of growth and the different activities that you should be focused on or adding in order to move to the next step. So, our overall framework for growth here is traction, momentum, and scale. So here we start with traction. And so generally, rule of thumb for this, if you're under 3 million in revenue, not ARR. So this could be like, research and development dollars going through SBIR, things like that. So if you're under 3 million, I put you in the traction bucket. Under 12 million annually, put you in the momentum bucket. And above that puts you in scale. 3 million, 12 million, and over 12. So before I jump into some of the specific activities to be doing during each stage, I want to hit on some common mistakes that I see. First and foremost is that many companies try to treat the federal government the same and have the same expectations as the commercial sector. So, the big difference, the easiest way to kind of drive this example home is if you go and start talking to a customer in the military. Let's say they have $1 million. The difference is there's a little bit of maybe a bid process, sometimes not on the commercial side, but based on the relationship and the trust that you build, you can just often enter into an agreement with that person and it moves very quickly. In the federal government and the military, you have that $1 million. They're interested in working with you. There's a whole acquisition process that is in between that conversation and that relationship and the actual contract award. So for $1 million, that could take easily 12 months to go through that process. And then there's contracting, my former occupation when I was in the Air Force, their job in the middle of building that requirement and going out and competing it. So they're trying to get competition. They won't let them just work with the requirement owner, the customer. They won't let them just work with who they want to work with. So you have to understand that there's a huge amount of regulation and process in between that relationship and an actual contract award. The other piece I see, and we'll break this down more in traction, is that people get stuck and they start kind of doing the same activities. So there's a steep learning curve. So let's say you're coming in and you're starting the SBIR program and phase ones and phase twos for the first time. There's a very steep learning curve to actually get your foot in the door and get those actual contracts. And so a lot of people, like, they go through that year or two of pain, they learn that process, they start getting a couple $1 million through that process, and they don't realize that they've really got to change. What got you here won't get you there. You have to change the types of activities, and there's whole different processes and relationships that you have to build beyond those in the traction bucket. So all that to say, like, this evolves, this changes, and so I want to highlight some of those. Final mistake I see, then we'll start breaking down the different roles and functions that should be going on at each stage. So a lot of people, there's always an asterisk here. If you have a billionaire founder, congratulations. You can probably skip a couple steps. For most companies, again, 80-90% solution here. You shouldn't be hiring the retired generals. You shouldn't be going and trying to get meetings with Congress if you don't have a prototype, if you don't have that product market fit. There's a couple different reasons. So, like, one, that credibility. Either you can get that credibility from the commercial sector. If it's good enough for Amazon and it's a logistics solution, like, a lot of credibility there. If it's a great cybersecurity solution and JP Morgan Chase is using it, okay, a lot of credibility there. You could look at potentially reaching out sooner than later. But with that said, if you go and sit down with a 3-star general, a 2-star general, whatever, it feels nice. It feels fancy. You're going to the Pentagon. So cool. So hip. But they're not going to risk their political capital. They're not going to risk their career on a no-name company, someone that doesn't have, again, that traction momentum, have that credibility in working with the Department of Defense that is already solving those problems. And they're also, like, they're not going to work the project. So unless they specifically, the generals, again, high-level folks, are specifically handing it off to a project officer, someone that's actually going to do the work and do the funding process and do the contract process and work with you on the specifications and the statement of work, it's just not going to happen. So hopefully that will save a lot of money and 6, 12, 18 months of frustration because you're having all the right meetings, you're meeting all the right people, and nothing's happening. Okay, so let's actually get into the meat and potatoes here. So at the different, getting to that's here. So the different stages. So starting at traction. What are some of the activities that we need to be doing here? Again, we've got the choo-choo train out there in other videos. I'll be hitting those again. But a lot of this activity is like phase ones, phase twos, through the SBIR program, going after certain research and development funding, maybe it's through challenges, prototype other transactions. A lot of the activities here in Traction are going to be proposal submissions. So obviously, it can benefit you to have an expert. Now, I don't know that for most companies, the volume that they're putting in for proposals here is really worth adding, 80 to 100,000. I'm counting like indirect costs, software, all those different activities, the length of training to bring someone on board. But all that to say is like you do need quite a bit of proposal activity here. Doesn't justify bringing someone in-house. The trade-off there is okay, a lot of times we see, maybe it's a seed or series A company, the founders or some of the engineers are working a lot of the proposals. So it's just that benefit analysis of, do we want to do this in-house? Is it worth taking that time off of the team to work on our product and actually do the engineering there, or work on the company? Or is it worth that time building out the proposal? But that is one of the main activities that's going to be here under Traction. So other activities under the Traction kind of bucket, I would say some event attendance. Now, I don't think you need to go overboard. 3 to 5 in a year would be plenty. And so if you got questions on what some of those events would be, like, throw that in the comments. There's some really big ones, both for the Air Force, for the Army, Space Force. So there are ones in particular where there are thousands of uniformed military members going. And you can get there and start getting that feedback from them on, hey, like, what's the product market fit? Like, do they want it? Does it have to, do you need to make some tweaks and changes to your solution in order for it to fit their needs? So a couple of events to attend throughout the year. And again, you're mostly looking for those openings. Again, challenges, SIBRs, things like that, where there's a proposal submission cycle. You can learn about, again, get some of that product feedback from the events and find out about some of these entry points or submissions that you can do through that. But you don't need to be going to multiple per month, and certainly not going to them every single month. That's where I see a lot of people, again, waste time as they're out there schmoozing and making a lot of relationships when they're here at this early traction stage. Okay, so next, let's talk about momentum. Momentum, what we're going to add there is more business development activities. So this is where we would turn up the notch on momentum. So again, we've got at least 1 to 3 million in revenue in traction, and we're trying to take that step over into that up to 12 million per year range. So in this case, you've got sole source authority or you've got ongoing projects, and a lot of the different funding sources we talk about being in momentum, they have, like, you need that support, you need signers, you need things like that. You need program office support for a lot of them. So that does entail a lot of business development activity and a lot more travel. So this is both travel for attending events, but you also want to be going out and meeting your customer, building that relationship, getting their feedback on the prototypes or the demos or the things that you're doing on some of these early traction projects in order to, again, tee that up and start moving towards scale programs of record. The other piece is, like, there's still a lot of proposal activity going on here. My opinion is that there's actually a decrease between traction here and momentum here, because you should be getting more focused and have a better understanding of who your different customers are and the different end users. And so, like, the open SBIRs, the scheduled rounds, like, you can still be doing some of those, and that can kind of carry over between these two. With that said, it shouldn't be eating up and it shouldn't be as much time. You shouldn't be throwing stuff at the wall still. You should be more focused on getting those right customers and building those relationships and figuring out how to transition those and, like, pull in the program office relationships there. What we often see with companies that are kind of at this stage is this is where they really start looking at hiring internally. So it's figuring out those processes and sources for hiring. Again, another kind of common mistake I see here is they'll just hire a veteran. I love it. Hire veterans, please. Going on record, we've got a ton on our team. But what I want you to understand, especially if you're coming from the commercial side, is that not all expertise is the same. So it may be that you're doing something that would impact pilot training. So yes, pulling in a pilot in that case because they've got all the relationships and they've been through the training and they understand those structures and the different squads, all those, that can make sense. But know that the pilot is probably not has no clue how the acquisition and funding processes work. So know that yes, hire veterans, they understand the structures and the different kind of programs and rank and all these things that are unusual and different to the commercial sector, but not all veterans are created equal. So think about your product and what your pain points are. Is it opening those doors to those right organizations? Then yeah, you find someone in that career field that got out, they would be a great addition to your team. But I've seen so many people, in this example, just to carry it, hire a pilot and then want them to go and get them funding. Well, they don't have any experience related to that. So that's just something to be aware of as you're in this stage. So a lot of the activities, starting to learn what some of these different hiring sources and pathways are. How senior of a role of a person do you want? You're going to pay a lot of bucks for people that have, many years of experience in this industry, or do you want to bring people in and kind of train them up on your specific processes and your products? So that's kind of the next piece here at Momentum. Moving to scale. So how do things change here? So I would argue, and again, another big mistake I think I see people, I think I've seen it over and over again, is that they're kind of stuck here. So they're slinging 10, 15, 20 servers a year and not putting the time, energy, and building the right teams here to actually reach scale, reach program offices. And it's really hard to do these activities and be moving towards a program of record and really big sole source contract vehicles when you're overwhelming the team with a ton of proposals and just trying to basically reach scale by doing these activities a lot. It's different activities and different focus to actually get to scale and stay there. So again, more business development. So this is where, yes, pulling in a retired general, you've got all this credibility, you've got all these relationships, all the feedback. Now getting into a program office and sitting down with a general, that can make sense. And then they can direct resources to support what's already been going on. And again, the credibility and validation that's already happened. Somewhere between here and here, looking at congressional ads, that could be a great way to help step across this. So hiring an outside lobbying firm, or however you want to approach that. Again, lots of travel. There will still be some proposal submissions and things like that. What we really see here is they've really started to build out a team. And so you've got your team structure, and now you're starting to move into focus areas. Okay, these folks are now concentrating on Air Force and Space Force, these on Army. This team is just to focus on SBIRs and other earlier stage opportunities. So that's where it kind of gets divided out there. So a lot of training, a lot of structuring, getting these teams to work together. How does business development hand things off to capture, hand things off to proposal, and go through this whole process to build relationships, shape it, and then actually submit the proposals and win. So a lot more activities there. And final piece of this, how does this grow further from here? So we're at scale. If you have a different product, or let's say you've reached a program office with the Air Force, it could be with a couple tweaks, you can reach a Navy or Army need, and then you can go and scale with them. So that's where some of these activities with a new customer, new use case to reach that scale kind of comes into play. So we have another curve from here going from scale to then more program offices, more use cases, more scale. So thanks again for watching. I hope you found that informative.